It was about 48 hours before the launch that it was going to be called Blast. And she said, hang on a minute, what about Boost? Don't you think that sounds so much better? And yeah, kind of the rest is history.
Hello and welcome to the We Built This Business podcast, the place for UK entrepreneurs and business owners who want to build a multi-million pound business. I'm Daniel O'Sullivan, founder of Red Cactus Events, Team Building Experiences and Shazoo Media. Speaking with some of the UK's most successful entrepreneurs, I will unpack their journey from startup to where they are today. Once a month, I will record a solo episode giving an inside look at our progress as we begin to build a $5 million revenue group in the event and media industries. If you want to build a multi-million pound business, you're in the right place. In this episode, I'm speaking with Simon Gray, founder of Boost Drinks. Simon grew Boost Drinks to 75 million in revenue and has recently sold his business to AG Barr for an initial 20 million. Let's head over to the podcast. Hello. Today, I'm pleased to have Simon Gray on the We Built This Business podcast, talking about Boost Drinks. Simon, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
So, Simon, let's just start by talking about Boost Drinks. So, I know a number of people will probably know what Boost Drinks is, but can you tell us a little bit more about the company?
Yeah, so Boost Drinks is very much a challenger brand in the functional drink space. It started off life as an energy drinks brand, and it's developed into more of a broader functional proposition now. It's something that I set up in 2001, not long out of university. No real business plan, if I'm honest. I sort of stumbled into the food sector. I was an energy drinks drinker at university, thought it was a great proposition, very kind of expensive for a student if you're consuming these things kind of every day or every night. Ended up, as I said, into food wholesaling, met a manufacturer, asked them if I trademarked a brand, would they package this for us? Because we've always outsourced our manufacturing. And that's been very much still where we are today. It's been a brand that's been organically built from the ground up. We haven't had the big budgets of some of the brands that we're sort of up against and fighting for shelf space with. So yeah, sort of bit by bit, we've been building distribution, driving awareness. And the business has grown to about 75 million in revenue. We had an approach for the business in December 22. That was a successful process. And we sold that to a company called AG Barr, who are the owners and makers of Iron Brew. It's probably their most well-known brand, and also Rubicon. And I've been working with those guys and my team for the last couple of years. And about 6 months ago, the guys announced that they wanted to integrate the Boost Drinks brand into their business. So some of our team have joined the bar business. Some roles have been made redundant. And we're just coming to the end of that process now.
I'm looking forward to kind of going through that in a lot more detail. That's some story we've got going on there as well, especially with the acquisition at the end, which is, if most business owners, they're told start with the end in mind. If I could just start with one question, was that the original plan from day one?
Do understand that context of start with end in why, and we'll probably talk a bit later about what next, and I am more considered to that question. At the time, it was supposed to be, I guess, just a lifestyle thing. There was no plan. I'm not joking about that. We listen to podcasts now. We possibly have access to mentors who are guiding us. Back in 2001, I was very wet behind the ears, didn't really think about too much about the future, didn't really consider risk. A bit like a sort of kid learning to walk. You're sort of a little bit fearless. You just sort of crack on, and before you know it, it's starting to grow. So no, it wasn't a well thought out plan at all.
So let's take us back, Simon, to your school days. So were you interested in business? Was it something that when you went into university, you thought that you were going to become a CEO of a company that's trading at 75 million?
Well, I think no is the answer to the last bit, but I did enjoy business. I grew up, family background, born and bred in Leeds. My parents were in the world of business, doing various things. So I guess I grew up, around that. I've always had a thing for business, enjoyed business studies at like A-level, even though I think I was still one of the only kids in the class that was being sort of kicked out of the classroom. The whole Richard Branson Virgin story, I always found sort of really interesting. I actually went to Newcastle Poly originally to do a course that was called Business Information Technology. So I thought, business studies and computers, that's the future. But it was actually learning about the inside of a computer and how you'd apply that in business. So I ended up partying hard that first year. My parents hauled me back to Leeds. So that was the end of my Newcastle Poly days. But then I went to university in Leeds, did a European marketing degree. So I guess, yeah, I love business, but I suppose unlike maybe some of the, whether it be law or maybe medicine or things like that, where there's a kind of clear route for you next, when you do business, you don't really have that clear path ahead. So that's where I was saying I sort of ended up getting a summer job in a food wholesaler, and one thing went to another from that.
Yeah, I did business studies at university as well, and I found that when I came out, I was a generalist in pretty much every subject of business, but I didn't have any expertise in one particular area or have any clue of what I actually wanted to do.
I see that, to be honest. Yeah, I see that as a bit of actually a strength when you look at it, because it's probably having that comfort, even at a low level in a number of areas, that gives you the confidence maybe just to sort of crack on. And we'll probably talk a bit more soon, but I guess all I've done over the years is bring those specialists into those areas to really take the business forward.
Let's talk about, so you're at Leeds University. What happens that basically starts the business, which is Boost Drinks?
I don't think you necessarily even realize at the time, but there's probably some subconscious things kind of happening. So I mentioned about being an energy drinks consumer before I was a brand owner. So I got the proposition. I understood this slight sort of pain point for a student that these products were quite expensive, but didn't really do anything with it at that point. Then you fast forward, I'll say a year or two, I ended up in food wholesaling. I was learning the ropes of kind of running a business, getting a bit of a feel and flavour for that. The supermarkets were starting to produce own label energy drinks. So kind of energy drinks at an affordable price point. I saw the manufacturer I was working with doing some of that for them. And maybe that's where the sort of the light bulb kind of moment came in. I thought, well, hang on a second, I could do that. But I didn't really know how. They again, slightly naively created a brand, which I have to don my hat to my wife. It was about 48 hours before the launch that it was going to be called Blast. And she said, hang on a minute, what about Boost? Don't you think that sounds so much better? And yeah, kind of the rest is history. So you start off with a brand name. We approached a manufacturer. We all need those lucky breaks kind of along the way. That manufacturer, thankfully, said yes, they would manufacture it for us. I had no team, but because of my food wholesale business, I've been working with one or two sales agents who knew wholesalers and retailers, so they got the proposition in front of people. And then the wholesalers themselves, all those discount retailers that we're working with, were giving us profile. And then it became a kind of organic build, from there.
So most people's obstacles to starting a business is raising finance, essentially. You've got no guarantee that it's going to work. How did you go about generating some money so that you could actually start the process of creating a drink?
A couple of things on that. I guess the first one is that because I had this small sort of food wholesale business, it was a trading business. We were buying and selling, and it was generating profit. So there was a little pot we were building up there. I say we, it was I, but entrepreneurs tend to use the word we a lot of the time. At the same time, I got a small firms loan from the bank. I mean, it was very different in 2001. There was no angel investing. There was no crowdfunding. There was nothing really like that. So small firms loans were available. But then the other piece that kind of happened, and again, a bit more luck than judgment, one of the retailers that was serving, is a big discount retailer, was actually paying their suppliers in 7 days to get best prices. And we were paying our manufacturers in 30 days. So quite quickly, I was starting to learn about cash flow, which is something I'd never really sort of considered before. So yeah, a bit of a leg up with that as well.
You've got your prototype. What happens? Do you go to, how do you get your distribution is what I'm thinking. Because, we're an events company. We sell through the internet now. Back in 2001, things were very different. How do you actually get your product in front of a customer?
There's two customers, I guess, in our chain. There's the retailer, who is our direct customer, and then there's a consumer that's the one that goes through the door and buys the drink. So I suppose because, again, we had no marketing budget, it was all about getting the product onto shelf. So these sales agents who knew people managed to get us sort of product on shelf, or products on a warehouse floor where a retailer might come in, or a bigger retailer would just give us shelf space. There was the likes of Red Bull, there was the likes of Lucozade. They were kind of the only two brands that were around. They were all kind of quite premium. And I think the retailers and wholesalers liked the fact that we were a different price point, probably gave a bit of leverage in some of those conversations. So they gave us a chance. And because I guess a lot of them were sort of privately owned businesses, I guess there was a sort of empathy and an understanding that we as a private startup, some of the challenges sort of we were facing. We've never traded with the big four grocers. So the world of sort of corporates and PLCs and that kind of thing, it wasn't built that way. It was built through convenience stores and discount retailers originally. And so, yeah, I think they recognized that. We got the products on shelf. And then once you've got some distribution points, then you can start investing in marketing. Because I guess the big lesson for anybody is that, you can have the biggest marketing budget in the world, but if you haven't got distribution where people can buy your products, D2C is obviously a little bit changing that game now. You can service people directly. But back in the day, it had to be an organic build. And then bit by bit, as we're growing our distribution points, then you start to overlay the marketing in the areas and been the kind of spider's web from there.
So the marketing side of things. So what was the first kind of big campaign that Boost Drinks operated essentially that brought in quite a substantial growth to the company? Was there one campaign in mind that you have?
It was probably a couple, to be honest. I mean, sampling has just always been probably the biggest part of what we do. And we still do now, getting products in people's hands and getting people to taste it, and word of mouth, I think, is the biggest. So, students are also the entry point for the brand. So sort of Freshers Week, hundreds of thousands of samples into goodie bags when students first up at uni. That's always been a big lever, for us to drive awareness. I suppose when it comes to outdoor media, I mean, yes, again, what do they call it these days? Geo-targeting. Again, we weren't doing that then, but you try to recognize in the areas that you've got distribution, try to be regional before you go national, with your marketing. So it was outdoor campaigns, probably aligned to the cities that we were driving distribution in.
Yeah, because I was the first time I was made aware of Boost was when I was at university. And I received I think it was a goodie bag for a Freshers Week, and yeah, there was a Boost drink in there, and that's what I clocked it as in, like, I wondered if that was your way into the market, because at the time that was quite unique. So let's talk about as the team grew. So you started obviously as yourself, you had food distribution or food manufacturing. At what point did you kind of make the decision to focus solely on energy drinks, and then as a result from that, grow the team?
Yeah, so about 2-3 years in, once you start to see that the brand was getting some traction, then I started to think, hang on a minute, this is actually probably a bit more scalable. Customers are challenging you on, production capacity and those. So you have to start thinking bigger. So I just got married, so I still had no kids at that stage. So the opportunity to sort of roll the dice, kind of, so to speak. And you're always asking yourself, even now, if this goes wrong, what is the worst case scenario? And if you can live with that, then so be it. And I suppose I thought, well, the trading business I could always go back into if this didn't work. But it was time to focus. And so it was a couple of part-time people that were joining the team, a little bit of admin, a little bit of marketing. As I said, all the manufacturing and logistics has always been third party and still is. It was working with a few more sales agents who knew our sales agents. So they were growing the base. And that probably took us from kind of 2001 when we started up till about 2009, 2010, and then the model changed again. That's when we decided that we wanted to bring the sales function in-house, a little bit more control, a little bit more focus. We started building out the marketing function. There was a bit more back office and finance kind of support needed. And so we started, we brought in, one or two key personnel who had kind of been there, done that, got the t-shirt with other brands. And that's where I was kind of learning off those guys. And I guess really I've just been kind of the glue over the years that kind of holds it together and sort of sets the tone and the pace.
Would you say that you brought in people that were technically better than you were at certain things? So going back to when we were talking about university being business as kind of a generalist, you kind of knew a lot about a little bit of everything. So you had to bring in certain experts in certain areas to grow the business.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's been, I suppose, the key all the way through. Yes, we wanted to grow sales, so we went and found ourselves, a superstar sales director who knew people, well connected, getting to puff our chests out a little bit more, with the brand. Then it was about, as I said, people in marketing. Then it was an FD when it became like management information and cash flow and that type of thing. And yeah, that's all we've ever done is keep, evolving the model, bringing people into purchasing and operations. So while we don't do the manufacturing or the logistics in-house, having specialists who understand that, having advisors, non-execs, people that I can lean on. I joined a leadership group about 8 years ago. So again, you then start to surround yourself with other business leaders sort of once a month. So you get out your bubble and you get your thinking challenged, stretched, call it what you want. So yeah, it's been a constant, I guess, evolution. And I suppose the key piece, whether it's people, the pack designs, whatever it may be, I think we have to try and stay ahead of the pace of change around us. I think that is kind of like a critical lesson. I think if you stand still, then yeah, you're usually in danger of going backwards.
If you don't innovate, you evaporate, isn't it? I think there's the cliche. With regards to the people side of the business, obviously building the culture and developing your people, how did you go about kind of creating that team culture that was able to, either promote high performance or actually push the business forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. I suppose if I'm honest with you, culture's not something I really understood. I think we're in a much better place now. And again, just some jumping ahead to come back, an amazing accolade for the business was 2023 when we made the Sunday Times Best Places to Work, which again was sort of, a fantastic feeling, but again, testament to everybody in the team, to our people and culture director that we brought in who's taken us on a journey since sort of 2018. But back in the day, when we're first starting out and you're a much smaller unit, I guess people kind of feed off the leader. They can see you, they can work alongside you, and your DNA and your personal values are, I guess, what people see and experience. I guess at the time, though, I wasn't explicit about that. So you presume that people could just see it. But as you're getting bigger, you have to be a little bit more explicit. You're getting things wrong because of the lack of clarity. You're finding people who are technically very capable, but maybe aren't the best when it comes to leading people. That's very much a different sort of skill set. I guess also, the clearer that you are with what's important to you, how you want it to roll around the business, then people will then start to see, isn't it for them? And people who have moved on, it's not because they're not great people, it's maybe not the right environment, for them. I've seen it with my kids more recently in school. One's in a massive school of 2,000, one's in a school of a few hundred. And the environment is different and the way those organizations roll are different. So I think having the clarity, again, bringing people in that can help with the vision, help with the values, help with roles and responsibilities, help with communication. Again, I've fed off those people. I've recognized sort of my responsibility as the leader, how you have to lead by example, how you have to take decisions that might not be popular if things kind of jar with the culture. And again, like everything, it's just been a kind of learning process. And sometimes a lot of the time, to be honest with you, you get things wrong to get it right.
Have you got an example of a decision that you've made that kind of went against the culture but was the right decision for the business?
There's probably been a number of examples at the time. And I suppose when I was probably a little bit less brave, I'd have maybe had decisions around people that I could and should have taken earlier. And I didn't necessarily realize the challenge it was bringing to other people in the team. And so there's situations where you sort of, you chew it over in your mind and you think somebody's adding so much value that you can't do without them. But what you can't see at the time is other people who are really going through a tricky period because of it. So there's probably been a couple of situations where I should have made those calls earlier. Again, you talk to people about it, but I was probably a bit soft, a bit too nice, probably wanted some popular, and realized that, some parts of being a leader aren't fun, and you have to. And again, when you're close to your team as well, and you've got strong relationships with people, it is business. It's not personal. But if it's not working, I've realised that I probably hung around too long to make those calls.
Yeah, I guess the being popular part is probably one of the hardest elements, I would say, for most business owners. I same boat as well. You know, you spend more time with these people than you do your family. So it's hard to separate that emotional, especially when you're growing, isn't it? To make that decision that someone that's been there for a long time isn't going to be that person necessarily to take you to that next level. And yeah, it's a tough decision to make. But like you say, I think hindsight is a wonderful thing because you never quite know, do you? So you always want to go like, well, let's give it another 6 months, give it another year, and then you go, my original thought was right.
Well, that's the thing. Like you said, life's easy looking in the mirror, so to speak. If we had all the answers, we'd get it absolutely perfect. But life isn't like that. And yeah, you kind of think, do you know what? Instinctively, your gut feel usually tells you, what it's going to be. But the mind and the gut don't always, sing in harmony. So sometimes, yeah, like you say, you just leave it, and then before you know it, you've got to a point where you knew you were going to be, and then you almost get forced into the call rather than taking it at your own pace.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to move to some of the challenges. Boost has been around now for 23 years. Can you think of a time where there was a huge challenge that you had to overcome, and what did you do to get over it?
I mean, there's been a few. I mean, we've all had the COVID challenge, and there's some things that actually in a very difficult situation. I think we grew as a business, that we grew as a leadership team, but probably the biggest challenge we faced was probably a cash flow one. It was around about 2014. I mentioned earlier, we were looking to bring our sales team in house. So we had some compensation packages with people who were leaving the business. At the same time, I was looking to launch another brand into the marketplace. And again, I sort of mentioned about, cash flow. We brought an FD in and we were just starting to find our feet with cash flow management. And obviously things were bigger than they were than when we first started out. But we had a real pinch point. Everything was kind of happening at the same time. And it was a real sort of sleepless nights, grinding your teeth in your sleep kind of stuff. It was pretty dark. And because we'd been quite cash generative in all of our life, we didn't really actually have much of a relationship with the bank, which on the one hand sounds great. At the same time, when you have these pinch points and you reach out, they weren't supportive. At the same time, I think the banks themselves were having some challenges, and the bank we were with will sort of keep them nameless. But I think we're probably the most risk averse. So they kind of said, even though we laid out a bit of a business plan, a bit of the cash flow for the next 6 months, they weren't having anything of it. Thankfully, there were some other banks out there that I guess were chomping at the bit for our business. Didn't necessarily know that when we're, experiencing this at the start. And quite quickly they got behind us, and we've never looked back. They supported us. The business plan kind of played out, the cash flow played out as we thought, and so we've kind of gone from strength to strength. But that was not pleasant, not enjoyable, but again, sort of big learning moment.
This podcast is sponsored by Team Building Experiences. If you're planning a team building event, away day, or corporate event, then check out team-building-experiences.co.uk and state podcast 15 in the comments to receive 15% off your proposal. The sleepless nights you talked about. So I guess, like you said, you managed to solve the problem, but has there been any other times where those sleepless nights have kind of continued and you weren't able to solve that problem?
You always eventually sort the problems. I mean, other dynamics we've had, like I say, around people and some of their personal situations, you do take a level of responsibility for. I mentioned we've sold a business. We've been going through a consultation and redundancy, process. And that doesn't sit comfortably. It never has. I'm a real sort of people person. I'm a big believer in the team. I suppose one of maybe my strengths, however challenging the situation is to remain quite balanced. I sort of believe in my head that it's not the problem. I think life has problems thrown at us, and I don't think it's the problem itself that is the problem. It's how we conduct ourselves or others conduct themselves around that problem. So I guess if you can try and stay as calm as you can, try and stay as clear as you can, however difficult it's getting, there is always solutions. The sun will always shine again. I guess it's how quickly you can get to that point.
Yeah, definitely. I always find that no matter the size of the problem, it tends to resolve itself within 2 weeks. And there's another problem coming along the line.
Yeah, I think it's going to take longer than 2 weeks. And I get the principle. Yeah, you're maybe on a different trajectory after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I think in the moment, you can feel like, the world is coming to an end.
It does.
It does.
So Boost is known for energy drinks. Can you talk about some of the kind of new innovative products that Boost has kind of introduced into the market along the way? I've read about a few of them, but if I could hear from you what those were.
Yeah, so over the time, I mean, we've tried to go for anything that adds functionality. So yes, we started in kind of high caffeine stimulation energy, and that's probably what we've become famous for. We've moved into isotonic, like sports drinks. That's a big part of what we do now. We've had other things over the years that haven't worked as well, whether that be things like smoothies. You may remember some of those little shots that were around in the marketplace, for a while. And we went into protein shakes. And again, we've had a relative level of success. And actually, I guess it's how your business measures success. We are a high volume, low margin kind of operation. So, we need to be, and especially because we're outsourcing the manufacturing, you need to be doing some big volumes. So some of the volumes we were doing, even when we discontinued things, are arguably bigger than other brands that are out there. So when we went into the protein shakes market, there was other brands out there. We're a fast follower. So we have to have brands who can do the education to the marketplace for us to surf on the back. And whilst there are some kind of cool protein brands out there, I'm not sure anybody's nailed it like Red Bull have nailed energy or Lucozade have nailed sports drinks. So they've been a bit more challenging. More recently, we've got into iced coffee, obviously on the back of, Starbucks and a serious play there. And I guess we've always seen the brand being able to play across a number of different areas of functionality. So when we look at, innovation and we look at the marketplace of vitamin waters, kombuchas, CBD. Yeah, there's a plethora of things out there where, I guess I could see the brand, moving into, as we go ahead.
What's the fastest growing kind of area for Boost drinks at the moment? Is it the iced coffee market?
Well, funnily enough, the sort of the stimulation energy market, which is where us, Red Bull, Monster all play, is still the biggest area of growth. The distribution points are still there for us. I think the penetration in the UK with the consumers, I think it's about 25%. So more people don't drink them than do. So there's still an education piece to be done there. And then there's other areas like sports drinks, which again, huge growth. Iced coffee is in fast growth, but it's still off a relatively small base. So there's still a lot to go after there, as well. So I guess this is where you just got to, prioritize, really.
So regarding, the company, is it AIB, the company that's acquired?
Yes.
AG Barr, sorry. So can I just go to fast forward a little bit to that kind of deal? How did that come about? Was it something that was years in the making, or was it something that just kind of came out of the blue?
You probably won't believe me, but when I said there was no launch plan for the brand, there was slightly naive and no exit plan either, and which makes it all sound very easy. It really wasn't. But I suppose what we've done and what I've learned, I guess, over the years is when you keep investing for success of your own, the reality is you are building something that arguably becomes more attractive, to others. I mean, I've always had it in my mind that if people want to have a conversation, would be open to it. It's a bit like if you put your house on the market, people know you want to sell it, you tend to get chipped on the price, and it might not necessarily be the right way to go. So I never wanted to put the business officially on the market. I never wanted to kind of destabilize the team in case things didn't come to a successful conclusion. But as we were coming out of COVID, I guess there was a lot of money tied up in the market. And because people, it's like with furlough, a lot of people had money to spend, they couldn't spend it on things. It was the same with businesses. They wanted to be doing it, but they weren't able to. And I guess I'd also seen, obviously quite close up in the food sector, how the hospitality industry had almost been decimated overnight. So you start to realize that, I guess, however well you think you might be doing, no one is invincible. No brand is invincible. And so I got into one or two conversations or one or two approaches. I started to consider that with the family, recognized there was no real succession plan there either within the family. And so you start to consider it, seriously. And then it became very much, is it the right partner? Is it the right price? Is it the right structure? How does the team get looked after? And I guess the longer that conversation went on, the more you could feel that, yeah, this could be a win-win. And we brought it to a successful conclusion, albeit right towards the end. That was when we had the whole Liz Truss 6 or 8 weeks of turmoil, which again sort of threw, all sorts of anxiety into the marketplace. But again, we managed to navigate it and got it over the line.
So with most business owners, obviously the dream is to exit. I think the problem with an exit is it's never, people aren't knocking on your door with a suitcase full of money ready to go and see you later, you're off on your cruise. So that was in 22, am I correct? So it's 2 years on. How do you go about that transition period? I believe it's called an earn out, but is the kind of transition bringing their management team in, or how does it work essentially?
Every transaction, is different. I suppose it depends on the owner and what they want. It depends on the buyer and what their needs are. I think in this particular situation, there was probably a couple of things kind of going on. The market was partly because of COVID and partly because of I mentioned sort of the economic turmoil that we're experiencing. There was a level of nervousness out there. So even though both parties wanted to do a deal, an earn-out model was put on the end just so we could work out kind of what that final price should be. At the same time, I was really engaged in the business. I wasn't ready. I wasn't looking to sell. We'd brought people in. We'd launched new innovation. It was a really exciting time to be leading the business. So to have an opportunity to sort of stay around, that was appealing for me. I think AG Barr also, like every other business, were coming out of COVID and they had a lot on their plate. So while they wanted to do this deal, they weren't necessarily ready to bring it all in-house. It's quite a big piece of work to integrate any business. So there was a kind of leave us to our own devices. There was no fixed period of time on that. I guess there was going to be an opportunity to look at synergies, what manufacturing they could bring in, what resource would they need. We got to that point about 6 months ago. So it's been very much over the last 6 months about making sure we can keep delivering on the brand performance, making sure that we can kind of hand over everything in a fashion that works for everybody, and make sure we protect the team, support the team, help them find new homes, whether it's in the business or elsewhere. So I guess that's kind of how our story played out.
Yeah, because I've spoken to a few people that have gone through that acquisition period, and they say it's always very challenging, and it's more challenging than they expected is one of the phrases that's been used. But like you said, every transaction is different, and it depends who's coming in and what's going on within the business. The current business, I believe, were you a sponsor of Leeds United? Did I see that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We had a relationship with those guys for, best part of about 5 years. Yeah.
And was that, what were the years that you were a sponsor for them? Was it a shirt sponsor?
It started off as kind of like, perimeter pitch LED kind of advertising. That's how we started. And it was actually, to be fair, it was the brainchild. I mean, I'm a Leeds United fan, sort of born and bred, but again, I'm a bit boring. It wasn't one of those entrepreneurs' dreams to have their name around the stadium. It wasn't one of those. A marketing director came in. It was just, again, I think as we're coming out of COVID and fans were allowed back into stadiums, we were trying to step change the awareness of the brand. AG United, as a challenger brand, it sat very well with us being a challenger brand. 2 Leeds brands, it made a great story, and it worked really well. I guess there was a bigger sort of leg up into Premier League football, and so that helped with the awareness. And our marketing director, he doesn't even know the offside rule. He's not a football man. He recognised that consumer and where the consumer's at, football is the space that we should be in, both in stadiums, online, sampling, all the things that we've talked about earlier. Yeah, we had a really good 5 years, and I guess as that relationship developed, it then became more of a stadium sponsor. So that provided, great traction as well. And then, as I said, in the world of obviously social, having, player activations and fan zones and those types of things, and sort of cross-fertilizing the conversation online with home and away fans, that's how you, again, start to really sort of leverage the weight in it.
Do you, from a campaign like that, kind of almost manage the ROI on it, for example? Because a lot of it is brand awareness. Is it localized, or is it just generally you would attribute some kind of benefits to that campaign?
Again, this is the this is the silver bullet of marketing. If we all knew which bit worked, we'd just do that. It doesn't work, as exactly as that. And to be honest with you, the ROI is not pure. There is a bit of instinct, but at the same time these days, there's a lot more data. So, the club will share with you what clicks they're getting through from their websites or their social channels. We can see traction of people who are purchasing products. We've got fridges in the store, so we can see that. But we're also doing our own kind of brand listening online. We were doing various pieces of online, research and questionnaires and kind of, unprompted awareness and prompted awareness, and has that turned into sales? So you get a real sort of a deeper granular feeling of that. At the same time, if the sun shines or if you do a big promotion in the store, that can also skew numbers. So it's really hard to get to the real pure number. And this is why a number of things that brands do, you just kind of hope it all, feeds into the same direction.
Yeah, I think it's Rory Sutherland that says about, ROI these days is just overrated because so many people are, have grown up with the PPC era of, you advertise on Google, you get a click, you get a buy, and you know exactly where you're getting your money from. But it's all these brand awareness, it's all the existential stuff that you can't always measure that actually has the biggest results. And a lot of people in marketing now, especially, just aren't used to that essentially, and that's where a lot of brands make the most money from doing that sort of stuff that you can't measure. So it's very interesting to see from that level, how you can get kind of a good response and track where you actually can get some return on it.
And I mentioned before, sorry, just about like the fact that we haven't traded in the supermarkets. If you take a gondola end in a supermarket and you can see rate of sale before and rate of sale after, and the cost of that gondola end, you can do a real pure sum there. But yeah, in the world of sort of local convenience retailing and buying products on the move and big campaigns, yeah, a lot trickier to measure.
What is the reason that you haven't gone into the big supermarkets?
So I guess back in the day, I mentioned about sales agents. So their relationships weren't there. So we started off elsewhere, but then you start to realize quite quickly that actually sports and energy drinks, a lot of them are bought on the move. So those kind of petrol stations, convenience stores is the landscape where people are doing most of the shopping. It then became quite apparent that actually it was a USP, the fact that we weren't trading with the grocers, not because there's anything wrong with that, but because the wholesalers were really getting behind it. They were really seeing prices protected, margin benefits that they were getting. And so, yeah, they got behind us more and more. We've never said we were never going to trade their strategy that was working more and more. And we've seen more in recent years how actually the supermarkets are moving more into the convenience small store formats, because that's where a lot of, shopping on the move, 24-hour living, is done. So it's became a strategy that we've become famous for.
You mentioned Richard Branson earlier, and it sparked a thought. He launched I think it was Virgin Cola. Do you remember Virgin Cola? And he obviously came up against Coca-Cola, and they used some pretty interesting tactics to essentially squeeze them out of the market. Did you ever kind of come across anything like that from your competitors?
Not really. I mean, I guess we've taken an approach, a slightly different challenger brand approach. I guess the Virgin Cola challenger brand, and I guess the Virgin brand is about almost like, going head to head. We've tried to surf on the back of it and probably tried to remain a little bit more low profile than that. So again, different approach, no sort of rights or wrongs. But that's been, I guess, the platform and the sort of trajectory we've used for success. In fact, I came across Richard Branson, Loris Sunday Times fast track company in 2010, because he actually launched his own range of energy drinks. I think it was called Daytime and Nighttime, DTNT. So he was very complimentary actually about the success that we had. Whereas I think on that one, Virgin struggled somewhat.
I don't think there's a business that he hasn't launched, is there?
No, probably true.
Was he nice? I mean, all I hear about him is he's a great guy, but obviously the press aren't that keen on him. But I mean, for me, I've read his books, and he's a fantastic
Yeah,
pin-up boy for British entrepreneurship, isn't he?
yeah, absolutely. I think the pinnacle of kind of what a lot of us sort of aspire to do and achieve. And I guess the one thing that was really interesting when we went to an event that he hosted, he sort of rocked up in his sort of jeans and leather jacket. He was very much sort of dressing down. Even back in the day, and he did. Again, like a lot of our businesses, we talked about bringing in people. I think he had on the day sort of his CFO, I think on stage with him. And, when the conversation was very much about kind of like innovation and crazy ideas and all the things that, he kind of wanted to do, he was talking about the fact that his CFO was the one that kind of said, yeah, great idea, Richard, but we're not going to do that one right now. We've got enough going on over here. So, yeah, a few of the more corporate types, supporting.
I love that. Yeah, I could listen to Richard Branson's stories all day long. He just don't know how he does it. I really don't. I really don't. And I was speaking to a guy on a podcast a couple episodes ago, and he said that Richard Branson's got a lot to answer for because he's the reason I keep setting up new businesses, and I think he's inspired a lot of entrepreneurs over his time.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just think he's probably even more entrepreneurial, than most of us. I actually think most entrepreneurs actually are probably more risk averse than they make out, or maybe other people perceive them as. Whereas I think Richard Branson is probably one of those that I think he just can't wait to go to the next thing and can't wait to go to the next thing, and arguably I think his risk profile is much higher up the scale.
So let's talk about Simon now. So you're about to leave Boost Drinks. Is that where we're at the moment?
Yeah, so the business has now integrated into the new owners. So we've got a little bit of tidying up and a few members of the team still in situ till the end of the year, and then yeah, it's very much kind of what next. So I'm just trying to work through at the moment, what that might look like. The bar guys are keen for me to stay on in an advisory capacity, so we're working through that piece. At the same time, I've got a few ideas about other brands and other areas that you could go into. I then start to think about the world of mentoring and maybe working alongside other startups. You look at investment opportunities, charitable opportunities. But at the same time, I've been speaking to people who have kind of been on this journey and sort of got into next chapters themselves. And sort of the word of caution actually is a bit, don't jump in too quickly. Some people are regretting it. And I'm actually enjoying where I am sort of right now. So while there's a level of uncertainty, it is a fortunate place, to be. So yeah, trying to understand what it could look like. Could it be, non-exec type work? And I guess the question I'm trying to answer in my head is, whatever I do, why am I doing it? Because I think once you understand the why, then you can soon figure out the what and the who and the where. So that why, I think a lot of people, when they've had a successful sale, are often quite keen to give back, are quite keen to sort of make a bit of an impact again. But the impact second time round, might be different. So I just need to work that through.
Yeah, I think that's powerful advice, and I think we spoke a little bit off there about it is difficult for a number of people when they have that exit, because the world is now your oyster, and it's never been that way. You've been headed to the metal for 20 odd years, and suddenly someone gives you a blank piece of paper, and it's a lot to choose, and focusing on that why is really important.
Yeah, I think
So
it's easier to sort of just, stay in your industry. That's kind of what you've become, famous with a small F. That's where you sort of ego gets a little bit sort of stroked the most, and people are challenged a little bit about maybe taking some of your skills into another sector or another part of either business or charity or wherever that may be. And maybe the answer's a bit of both, I guess. Just have to say.
do you have like a clause that means that you wouldn't be able to go back into the energy drink sector, or once you're done, you're done?
So most transactions come with restrictions for a period of time. So yeah, there are things that are in place. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So startups, so are they something that excites you?
Yeah, I mean, again, when we're talking about, when I was the startup and you look at Branson or you look at other sort of, great success stories. And it's interesting now when you listen to podcasts and you hear some of the most amazing stories. And again, they weren't plans. I
Mm.
think I was listening to, I think it was Airbnb recently, when somebody just rented out the bedroom. It wasn't a business idea. And then somebody sort of taught them into maybe that could become a business. And, here you are. So, you know, whether it's in the food sector and you're seeing great new brands kind of coming through, whether it's just working with, young entrepreneurs who are looking for some support, some challenge, some are looking for some investment. I think it's great to be able to pass on, the bits of knowledge and some of the scars that we've sort of taken over the years. And while I don't think it's right that people shouldn't learn from their own mistakes, I think if you can sort of fast track things in areas or coach people a little bit into, thinking a bit deeper about the calls that they're making, then again, it feels like a bit of a win-win.
No, that's great. I say, I think there'll be many startups out there that may want to get in touch just to try and get a bit of advice, because I think that's the key, isn't it? If you're able to give back a little bit, even if it's just a 5-10 minute conversation, it can sometimes change someone's life essentially at this the startup level.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes obviously it's the little black book of kind of who you know. Like you said, it's a bit about, sort of what you know. And I think also a lot of people probably don't realize that when people sell a business, again, depends on your age, how well you're feeling, the number of kind of family sort of factors. They often think people don't want to be working. And while the reality is, yes, very, grateful and sort of financial security, because of the transaction, but that's not the reason why we get out of bed every day. It is that purpose, it is that challenge, it is that sort of jeopardy and levels of risk that we all sort of thrive on. And the kind of the rewards that kind of come out of it are more the outputs. That's not what you actually, set out to do. I think if you go out there all out about, I want to make money. I mean, again, money is an important driver. It's kind of one of life's building blocks. But I think if you focus on doing the right things, the rewards come with it.
Yeah, definitely. I've couple of quick fire questions, Simon, for you.
Mhm.
What's the best business advice you've ever received?
I think it's probably don't fall in love with your own products. I think it's very easy to kind of think whatever you've launched, um, it's the real deal. And I think having the ability and sort of agility to move at pace. I mean, I look at some of our kind of early packaging and you sort of wince at it. But at the time, it felt like the right thing to do. And I think concepts can be right, but actually it might need tweaking. And I think if you're very much wedded to, no, this is how it has to be, then you may not get the support that you need.
That's really interesting. I think being able to move on from a product and not completely give it everything you've got when other people maybe necessarily are saying you need to move to the next thing
Yeah.
is definitely a big learning curve. Next question. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to start a business?
I'd say probably two, if I can have two.
Of course.
I think one is the fact that there is no silver bullet to growing a brand. What do they say? It takes 10 years to create an overnight success. People hear about things and they don't see all the stuff that's kind of gone on and gone wrong, and you tweak to get to where you get to. So I think you have to be patient. I think, yeah, it's all those small steps kind of along the way that ultimately deliver it. So, you have to go through the pain, you have to be patient. So no silver bullets. But at the same time, I would always encourage people just to get on with it as well. I think you can spend time polishing business plans and you can miss the moment. I mean, timing for us and for lots of businesses is key. There isn't a perfect time. So actually, if you've got an idea, you've got a hunch, you tested it with a few people, again, getting the rock rolling, I think, is the hardest piece. And doing it in a crowded market is a lot more difficult than in a market that's relatively sort of embryonic. So I'd get on with it and polish it on the way.
Love that. Yeah, great advice. Last question, Simon. What podcasts have you listened to recently that have inspired you?
I'm listening to quite a few different ones now. I mean, clearly there's a few in the business space. I mean, everybody knows about the Stephen Bartlett one, the guys that do the high performance one. So there's a number of business and leadership pods that I really enjoy. I go out walking early morning, I like listening to those. And there's actually a few around health and well-being as well
Mhm.
that I think again probably didn't recognize. Like with a lot of people, maybe sort of pre-COVID. Life is precious. And actually, I think whether it's in your kind of role as a father, a husband, a business leader, a friend, I think looking after yourself, which might sound a bit selfish, but I think the stronger and the better you are mentally and physically prepared, then I think the better you can be to support others. So I've taken quite an interest in a few of whether it be the things like the Zoe, kind of podcast that's out there now. Um, Rogad Chatterjee's one of the doctors. He's got
Yeah,
obviously a lot of advice to hand out there, and then obviously a few of the sport ones, as well.
yeah. What I love about podcasts is being able to dial into an expert.
Mm.
Previously you'd have to pay for this advice.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And I think most people seem to be wanting to learn, and all the information, all the stories, all the learnings that are out there. And I guess because it's at your fingertips or sort of in your ears, so to speak, you can kind of take it and listen to it anywhere, anytime.
Simon, it's been absolutely lovely chatting to you. Fantastic journey you've been on, and really looking forward to kind of the next chapter as well to hear about what you're going to go up to after the exit. Where can people that have listened to this podcast find out more about yourself?
I think mainly probably through LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile. I'm relatively active. Been a bit quieter this last sort of few weeks with everything that's been going on. And anybody who looks into probably the Boost Drinks, website, or the AG Barr website now, probably like find a few pointers on me as well.
Lovely. Well, we'll put all those links on the show notes as well for afterwards, so any listeners can go there and find out more information about you. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on, Simon.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much for the invite. I really enjoyed it.
So if you enjoyed this podcast, if you could do one thing for me, if you could like, follow, or subscribe to the channel on your podcast listening app, enables us to grow the show. Thank you.